All right, I got about 1 o'clock. Let's get started. This is Chris DeCenso, Growth Strategy Partners. Welcome to Planning and Managing Demand for the Shooting Sports Industry in 2017, maybe and beyond. I'd like to start first by welcoming Kenyon Gleason from NSSF-Adjusted. Kenyon, you here?
I am here. Thank you very much, Chris. I appreciate that. And want to welcome everybody on the call today as well. We've got a great group of folks, a lot of names, familiar names in the list for me, so welcome. Hope you're having a good winter, and hope you're going to have a good Christmas here. I wish you all the best for the holiday season here coming up. I want to thank Chris and George for putting together today's session, and certainly want to thank our panelists, Mike, Renee, John, and Jim, for agreeing to be on the call today. Appreciate you taking the time to share your insights on what's happening in the industry. Definitely been an interesting year, a big year for sales in the industry. Definitely some big stories in the political arena and some big news here with the election recently. Of course, uncertain how that'll all play out here, but we definitely scored a win in terms of Supreme Court nominees and things of that nature by having Trump over Clinton. So definitely a big win there. A big year for NSSF and our expo this year in Kansas City. Biggest show we've had. Definitely proud of that, and certainly a lot happening in the association right now. If you're interested in a little bit more, I'm not going to go into it today, but if you want to check out my column in the December Shooting Industry magazine, talk a little bit more about some of the things we've been working on in 2016 and some of the key things we'll be moving forward with in 2017 as well. So if you're interested, that's in the December issue of the Shooting Industry magazine. Obviously, a lot of questions about what 2017 is going to bring, and our panelists today are probably going to have some really interesting perspectives. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back to Chris so we can get everybody's perspectives. Again, thanks everybody. Have a great holiday season, and I'll look forward to seeing you on the road in 2017.
Thanks, Kenyon. Yes, we have the answers today, and we'll get right to them. First, for those listening, I'll give you a little background to see who's here, so you know who's here. We have about 75% of the listeners are from manufacturers. The rest would be mostly distributors and maybe some other sales reps, manufacturers reps. We have about a third of the attendees are presidents, CEOs, or business owners. We've got 11% from the operational side, which is great. The rest, 56%, is sales and marketing, and then we've got 2 people from finance. So that's our background. What we're going to do today is provide you with some insights and some tools on how to improve your sales and supply chain planning process. And I'm going to focus, at least emphasize a lot today about the process. I know most of you probably listening want to know, geez, what they thinking for demand, but that's again only one piece of it. You need to use that forecast or demand or industry estimates to then internalize it for your business, and how does that apply. So we'll talk first about what the current situation is. We'll talk about the future, what the demand's going to look like, and then get into some of the tools, some of the sales supply chain tools that might be helpful to you as you start putting your plan in for next year and beyond, and then we'll wrap that up. Let's talk about who we got here today. I'm going to actually ask Jim, John, Mike, and Renee. Jim, why don't you give us a little overview, and we'll go through each person here.
Sure. Thanks, Chris. I'm Jim Kirkarudo, Director of Industry Research and Analysis for National Shooting Sports Foundation. Appreciate the opportunity here that Growth Strategy Partners and NASGW have put together for this. It's an important topic. I've been working on industry research for NSSF since late 2009. Had a pretty good run over that time period, last 7+ years. So I get to take a look at all the indicators out there, which we'll talk a little bit of today. Take a look at participation in the various segments of the market, and really enjoy working within this industry for sure.
Thanks, Jim. John?
Good afternoon, everyone. John McClellan. I'm Vice President, Sales and Marketing with Mossberg. I've got really over 20 years sales experience and sales management experience, 8 of which have been in our industry. And I think the timing of the request, when Chris asked me to be involved in this and participate in this call, it was just ironic timing, because I think I'm not going to say that we're new to forecast, but I think the importance of going through the entire process and growing and accepting and adapting to it has been a big one that we've been focused on over the last few years. As we know, data drives a lot of this, and I think the industry has gotten a lot better in getting that information, and now it's putting it to use. So taking a production plan and bringing that over to a true sales forecast and driving it has been a strong direction over the years for us over the last few years. So thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. And John, John's great. He's going to give us a good perspective from a firearms manufacturer's perspective. Jim has all the answers. I'll go back to Jim. Jim has all the answers. He has all the data. Being an engineer, I kind of like that. Mike is going to give us some insights from a distributor's perspective. Mike, how about a little background besides falling through roofs and ceilings?
Michael Halloran, Vice President of Business Development for Chattanooga Shooting Supplies. I've got about 30 years industry experience, currently sit on the board of NASGW and NSSF, and I really am appreciative of the opportunity to be here and be here with such a great group. So I'm looking forward to the call, and with that, I don't want to take any more time. I'm looking forward to getting into the data. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. And Renee, we're going to get someone that can tell us little insights about ammo, and Renee said she had all the answers, so it's easy. So Renee?
Well, I'm not sure that I do, but we're sure going to try and help give you some answers. But I'm Renee Waltemath. I'm the Director of Sales at Hornady Manufacturing. I've worked at Hornady just over 18 years now, with 9 years of it being in the sales department. And so touching on what John said just a little bit about growth planning and strategy and some of those things that, as many of you know, that hasn't been anything that has been easy over the past several years. And so being able to work with this and get into the data and try and come up with solid plans and going back to somewhat of a normal is something that I think a lot of us want to try to be able to do if we can.
Thanks, Renee. And then George and I will be facilitating this. George, how about a little background?
Well, I've been in the business a little over 40 years. Know everything from competitive shooting to hunting to manufacturing, on and on and on ad nauseum. And basically the reason Chris and I got together was due to industry relationships. I worked at SIG for 21 years. I co-founded and ran the academy, and all those 21 years I got to meet everybody here on the list, and hundreds of other people. And what I bring and what Chris and I bring to the table is experience and knowledge through those relationships and our own training and education and our own experiences. And the bottom line is our worth to anybody is saving time, which, of course, saves money. So, I'm an old-timer, been around for a while, and just love what I do. This is my passion, so don't get me started talking, because I'll wear you here out. That's enough.
You mix the old-timer and the southern accent, we go on for hours, but we won't go there.
There we go.
Chris DeCenzo, the good-looking guy on the left, I've been doing this for 30 years. I actually started in this industry, started with Ruger on the manufacturing floor. So I was receiving all the sales plans and forecasts and how to make sure things were produced. So I started kind of on the back end of this. I've been involved in the shooting sports probably since then, IDPA, USPSA, three-gun hunting, so forth like that. And now, George and I kind of involved in Growth Strategy Partners, a traditional management consulting firm, focused on the shooting sports industry. And one of the things that we do is help companies put the process together of building the sales and operations plan, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's start with, what's going on. George, how would you describe, the current situation, what's going on?
Well, everybody had the assumption that Clinton was going to win and Trump was going to go off into the sunset, on his own, and so I think a lot of the manufacturing folks, ramped up and got all the stuff together that they possibly could because they knew that it was going to be outlawed shortly, and didn't happen. And a lot of the folks took the perspective of, oh, woe is me, rather than looking at the glass being half full rather than half empty. And in reality, I've polled a lot of people, talked to a lot of people in the industry, and I think Jim will back me up on this, on the data, that we are actually seeing a little bit of an uptick. Black Friday, if I'm not mistaken, was one of the highest, if not the highest, sales volumes that we've had. And, of course, that came after Trump was elected. So my prediction on this thing is we're going to see some stability with a slight upward move, and we're not going to have to dump everything, at bargain basement prices and all that kind of good stuff. I think things are going to go along fairly smoothly. What we are going to have to do in order to make it go smoothly is to look at cost. What is the cost of the raw material? What does it cost to make it? And what is a reasonable profit for us? So in some cases, and some industry partners out there, they really haven't looked at it. It's kind of been a swag, scientific, wild guess on what they had for cost, and now they're really going to have to sharpen the pencil and take a look at what their true costs are in order to maintain a profitability. The other thing that I see is new entry-level customers. This is something that we all need to do. Some of us are getting into that mode right now. As a matter of fact, I'm going to Wisconsin next week with the U.S. Concealed Carry Association to do a video on entry-level shooters. And it's not necessarily personal defense or any of that kind of stuff. It's just getting people involved with firearms. Once you get them involved, that tends to get them to evolve and therefore buy more guns, buy more accessories, buy more ammunition, and that kind of spreads their footprint. So I think each company needs to work on a little bit of marketing and advertising in areas that maybe they didn't. In the firearms industry, as an example, we tend to preach to the choir, and we need to look at outside entities. Women now are starting to be recognized as viable customers in the shooting sports end of things. I think maybe we need to look at look even outside of that, ethnic groups or geographic groups, people that are not necessarily involved. Church groups, as an example. My wife and I teach on, and we've had a number of church groups ask us to come in and speak to the congregation about firearms ownership, and that kind of stuff. So we need to look for new customers. And the final thing is look at our products and look at our competitors' products and be able to differentiate how our products are different from anybody else. Somebody comes up and says, how's your product different? You say, well, it's made in the USA. Well, so are a whole bunch of others. So you need to look at the specifics and in differentiating products.
I think you hit it on the, and Kenyon mentioned earlier, right? We're all driving up to, the election, and speaking to some of the panelists in advance, the comment I heard was, what's the new normal? I don't want to spend too much time getting into the current situation. We know what's going on now, the big piece being, I think, the political side of that. The focus now should be, I think, right, what's the future look like? Okay? So George, the demand for 217, you've got a guesstimate on this? What's going to happen? How do you want to do this?
Well, we do a lot of different things. There was a game show on some time back. It was phone a friend. Ask the audience, or just take a guess on your own. And To be real honest with you, I think we need to poll our customers and see what the customers want. There are lots of opportunities that we have customer contact that we don't use. As an example, customer service. When people call in or request customer service, we need to have a battery of questions. You know, what would you like to see that we are making or that we aren't making, and ask the customers. And
let's do that.
Probably the best way to do that. So.
And that's our first poll for today. I want to know from the audience, what do you think demand will be in 2017 relative to 2016? So what I'll ask you to do is click an answer. Is it going to be higher than 10%, up more than 10%, up more than 5%, about the same as 2016, lower than 2016, by 5%, lower than 10%?
I think I said earlier 4 to 7. That's
4 to 7.
No,
that was mine.
4 to 7.
4 to 7. That splits it. But people are answering. What we'll do if everyone just votes on this, so we end to see what the audience says, and then we'll ask the experts and see what they have to say. We got almost 80%. This is great. Everyone's answering this. I'm going to write this down. I'm going to share it. I'll ask George for your input, and then let's go. This is good. All right, so let's see what we got here. So I'm going to close it, and I'm going to share it. And George, in fact, let me do this. I'm gonna jump to Mike. Mike, can you see the answers there?
Yes.
What's your reaction?
I'm at 8%.
You said 8.
Yeah, and looking at this, I'm not surprised at some of the categories because obviously there's a lot of things that can impact the market, but I'm comfortable at 8%, up 8.
Okay. We've got, and you got about 28% that thinks it's going to be about the same or more than 5%. So we've got that bell curve here in the more than 5 and lower than 5. Little extremes at the 10%. No, very few people think it's going to be more than 10%. Renee, what's your thoughts?
Well, I had said 7%. I think that some of this depends on what you do in the industry. If you manufacture accessories, or if you manufacture ammunition, or if you manufacture handguns, I think you might have had a different answer on each one of those. The same with if you're a distributor. So I think that some of it, some markets are going to be higher than others. And like I said, for us, I say about 7% will be up.
That's a good point because you know the market is just the big ocean, if you will. That's gonna pull or push the industry, and depends where you play in that industry, of how that's going to impact you more or less. John, what's your thoughts?
You know, for us, we're looking at this as the challenging year for us in the long gun category. As you look at over the last few years, I think the normalcy of that coming back, we're going to see a modest increase, over last year. I do think that, and when I talk about the core product, but I think also what we're going to start seeing is the new product introductions, and I think those are going to help assist in the driving the growth within the gun manufacturers, especially for us, and having that new and different product that's out there, I think is going to help drive the growth for us in the year.
You sound like a politician. I didn't get an answer.
I know. I'll say then it's going to be the 5% higher.
Okay, I'm teasing. 5% higher. What Renee? What categories you think are going to drive be stronger growth?
I think small compact pistols are going to continue to be strong, as well as the ammunition that goes along with those. Premium ammunition that goes in those compact pistols will continue to be strong for 2017. And I don't think the election would have had any impact on that whatsoever. And what I mean by that is that the demand is there. People want to be protected. It doesn't matter who's in office. And so I think that will continue to be strong. I think as far as premium hunting ammo, it's going to be a little bit softer because there's a lot of inventory out there. And so we've got to work through some of that. It's going to be, and going back to John's point, new products are definitely what's going to be driving and pushing that consumer to go get what's new.
And Mike, what do you think is going to be hot?
I would agree with Renee fully, except I would add the category of new users coming into the market space. We continue to have a growth from a new user aspect. So new product important, new user important, definitely going to be a concealed carry accessory and ammo type of year.
Okay. Let me
jump. Can I jump in just for a second? One of the things that if you look at Ruger as an example, they brought out the American rifle, and that was just kind of going to be a sideline type thing. Well, right now Ruger is canceling or stopping production of some of their more expensive rifles and ramping up the American. And what that means is that in the hunting end of things, people are getting more involved with hunting, and that's an entry-level gun. They'll come back to the higher-level guns and the more expensive guns, and the same thing, with the ammunition end of things. People will start at the low end, and then they'll start to work their way up. And I agree with Mike and Renee that concealed carry end of things is just completely out of sight. People are afraid in this country, and just because Trump got elected doesn't mean anything right now. It'll take 4 or 5 years or longer if we ever get it straightened out. So I think the concealed carry market's going to be on the way up for the foreseeable future.
And George, to echo that, I think on for us, we saw the similar results with our Patriot rifle as it relates to the new users and that entry-level rifle category. So they are falling in line with that.
So I want to go to Jim, ask Jim, and then Jim's going to show us some historicals.
All right, thanks, Chris. And let's see. As far as my thought process for what 2017 is looking like, I'll go with the flat to slightly up. 2016 is going to be a record year since the history of NICS going back to 1998. So it's always tough to beat a record. The good news is that everybody involved on this call here, talking and listening, have a say in what the future holds. George kind of hit it right on the head there. Newbies being really a key to this. You look at all the sales factors out there. Your main customers are, whether they're collectors, hunters, returning military, people buying for fear, people buying for personal protection. You take out one of those factors, the fear of the political buying, we'll see what happens, but you have to replace it either way with something. And you're not going to gain too many new collectors or hunters out there. We're certainly working on the hunters portion of it, but that newbies is really the growth market, I think, for the industry moving forward.
So why don't you show us a little here what you've got a few slides on the history of NICS and what's your interpretation of that?
Sure. There's been a fundamental change just since I started here about 8 years ago on industry data. We're starting to get more and more of it. We're certainly still not to the point where we have as much information as is needed, but some of the main indicators out there do give us a general idea, and probably the most popular one being the background check data. And briefly, what NSSF does with those numbers that the FBI puts out on a monthly basis is we adjust them, and the adjustment is down by pulling out any background checks that don't have to do with a firearm sale or transfer, and that's mainly just concealed carry checks or states checking a concealed carry database. So that's what we have in front of us here is a history of adjusted NICS data. And as you can see, by just ballparking what last couple Decembers looked like and projecting that out for this year, we will have a nice record year as far as background checks data goes. And then if you take a little bit broader view, Chris, the next slide there, gives us kind of cyclical nature of the industry. You know, you're going to see a strong December, as historically has shown. January, February, March will start to tail off. You'll see the you know, news stories about the demise of the industry. Look at sales falling off in April, May, June, July, but we all know that's not the truth. You know, it's a discretionary income product. It's a consumable good, just like many things that sell in December during holiday season and for us hunting season. We'll see that. But one of the things that stood out this year, the blue line there, the 2016 number, you know, what happened in, you know, June, July, really this in 16, that didn't happen in the last 4 or 5 years. And that might go back to that political fear. You look at that time frame, and Hillary had a pretty commanding grip on what was supposed to happen in November. So, you know, that might be, again, one of those sales factors that we have to make up in other areas. That remains to be seen. It's exciting times, and it's something that we can learn from, you know, a year from now to see what happened. And if we just move on one more slide, Chris, just historically, hey, when you have an industry that's going up, you know, for the last 5 years in this economic, you know, time frame, that's a pretty good record to have. Projecting again December numbers here, we're going to be up 11%, as I mentioned, which is a record year, the highest year since the history of NICS data. So hard to repeat, you know, going up 11%. But you know, the good news is, like I said, we all have a say in making that happen. As far as, you know, there's no one thing that you need to look at for understanding the market. You need to factor in your local market conditions, what your customers are saying. Again, that voice of customer feedback is extremely important. Listen to them and give them what they want. But if you want to look at other numbers out there and get historical information, 3 other things to really dig into are excise tax collections, the firearm production figures, plus the import-export data, and hunting license sales. And NSSF provides all those to our members in our shopping cart when you log in. Any members that have any questions on industry data, please feel free to give me a call at any time.
Thanks, Jim. You know, I think this is helpful for all of us, obviously, just to get a sense of what's going on in the macro environment. I think, as others have said previously, you got to start peeling this back into concealed carry, ammo, long rifle, you know, some of the different segments, and then see how that impacts you, you know, specifically on the business side. So let's dig into it. Let's go through. Let's talk about the planning process. And I'm not going to get into this in great detail. The theme here is that, you know, you've got to put your forecast together, your marketing plan, your sales plan. You basically get this demand plan, and there's this tool technique called sales and operations planning, which helps combine and balance the demand with the resources to deliver. And the point I want to show on this slide is really the impact of what the planning does on your business. And if it's done well or better, you will be more profitable. And if I could get across one point, it's that process of putting a sales and operations planning process together to manage it on a recurring basis, because it does change. And the companies that do a better job at that are the ones that are more profitable and therefore more successful. That's my preaching for today. So let's jump into the actual panel discussions on building a sales plan. I'm actually going to start with Renee. Renee, how does Hornady go about building the sales plan? Where do you start? How long do you look out? You know, what are the key things you have in terms of building that plan?
The key thing that we use is obviously history of what we did year prior. But then we also do take into account what we call a gut feel. What do we think certain things are going to do certain calibers or cartridges going to do based on maybe law changes in certain states where a cartridge may get more or less popular. We also take into account current order demand and trends in the marketplace. So we do go through by caliber and then all the way down to the item level and forecast out. But then from there, we actually do produce to demand, not necessarily just to forecast.
Okay, so you mix. So you first you do it. You put the plan together at the SKU level. Is that, I heard that.
Yeah.
You do a macro demand, then you have a gut factor adjustment. Is that
correct?
What I heard?
Correct.
And then yeah, go ahead.
Well, and then from there, you know, we manufacture the components that, you know, bullets and case making. Those go out quite a ways as far as having that in stock. We do go out 3 to 4 months at times to make sure that we have those components in stock. But then ammunition, you know, things can change at the drop of a hat, whether it be a political move or something happening. And so we do keep very close tabs on what's happening and the order demand and the scheduling. So on the ammo side, we run that pretty close and pretty tight and make sure that we can change if we need to based on what's happening in the market.
So you adjust, you put the, if I understand correctly, you put the master plan in, detail at the SKU level, but then adjust that based on the actual demand.
That is correct.
Okay. John, you mentioned earlier you're getting into it in a little more detail, more sophistication now. Tell us about Mossberg and how you're doing it there.
You know, I think the key to us is really coming down to communication and getting more of our managers involved in the process. So whether it's our managers responsible for international sales or buy group or any our distribution model, our chain business, we want to make sure that all that information is being bubbled up from each of the channel managers. So by SKU, we kind of roll that up. We'll roll in there, you know, any type of promotions that we have in the different channels, and we will look at it by SKU. And I think by doing this, we get the communication between the groups involving our internal people that are working with the production plan and laying this year-long plan out, but more importantly, keeping that rolling forward. So it's not just a yearly plan. It is, you know, just a rolling 12 months. Ideally, we want to get this out to 18 months. And again, we are making those tweaks to the production plan, but we're starting to understand, you know, the true sales demand from our customers. And, you know, that's going to enable us to look at a number of different things, where there's capital we need to, you know, make some additional equipment purchases, how we've got to adjust that production plan to accommodate more of the true sales demand. So for us, it's been an eye-opener on just getting it really driven by our managers within. It allows us also the ability to really, one of the things that we overlook at times is the SKU management of this. Last year, we made about a 23% reduction in our SKUs. We need to continue to do that and continue to manage those SKUs, because it becomes a nightmare for our production folks when you're talking about having to work with, you know, 400 to 500 different SKUs, exclusives for customers that we have out there. So it does give us a time to kind of look through and examine our business and, you know, can we make some subtle changes back from, if the only difference between a shotgun might be a fiber optic sight and a bead sight, then maybe just going with the one and we can drive that business in the one SKU. So again, it's been a great process for our company to go through and getting more people engaged and communicating as a group.
So you got a team involved, which you emphasized at the beginning. We could spend another whole hour on SKU rationalization, which is great, because we often see companies love to add new products, and you talked earlier about adding new products, but they forget to take off the old stuff, which then adds more complexity to the planning process, right? So
absolutely.
So that's huge. Again, we put that on our future webinar list here. Mike, as a distributor, how do you do it?
From a distributor aspect, I would say we've been very fortunate the last few years, and most distributors have allowed their inventory to have more flexibility and not manage it as tight as maybe we need to look at for the coming year. I do believe, much like John mentioned, SKU rationalization is key. But I would say from our aspect, what we do is we pull the team together. We look at data. It's all about the data, and I believe Renee started with that. It's a deal where I once heard, "In God we trust, all others bring data." this year will be a year of pulling forward the data and spending much more time in building a plan, executing a plan, and looking at your financial goals and sales goals as a unit, because obviously we need to maintain financial stability and we all would like to have financial growth. So based upon that, we do basically an annual plan. We do roll that plan once the year starts to look, as John mentioned, out to 18 months. We will take ours down to a subcategory level and then SKU level at key items like 9mm, 40 and 45 ammunition. We do a SWOT analysis to determine our strengths and weaknesses and opportunities and threats for that new year. We'll build our key performance indicators around what we're trying to achieve when we look at the plan that is developed, as well as the financial goals the company wishes to meet. We execute upon those, and we will review those numbers on a monthly basis, and we will take quarterly adjustments if needed. But this year will be a year that will be about turns from a distributor's aspect and managing inventory to optimize your financial goals.
Always a key metric for distributors, or anybody for that matter, but key thing for distributors. So interesting. Renee was at the SKU level, John was at the SKU level, you're at the subcategory level, but in certain cases you go down to the SKU level, which I find interesting. So you got a mixed piece of that, Mike, right?
Correct. And for us, with the amount of SKUs that we have, it's better for us. I mean, when we get down to the SKU level, we're still talking 15,000 SKUs that have to be reviewed. So it's very intensive, and hence the reason we look at a category, and then the main movers, they're the popcorn items, as I mentioned, the 9, the 40, the 45, handguns associated to that, holsters associated to that. We will get to the SKU level. You can never be out of those items.
So let me go quickly through the panelists. I'll just start back with Mike. How often do you formally survey your customers? Do you, and how often, on their input to the demand?
We formally survey our customers on a daily basis. Our sales team is on the phone speaking with customers and asking about the market and the direction of the market. And at that same time, we do ask where we're missing the market and what do we need to do. And that information comes back into a weekly sales meeting where the management team discusses the direction and the nuances that have developed, and then we determine whether or not to participate in that market change.
Okay. John?
Likewise, I think, from phone calls to, meetings that we conduct throughout the year with our customers, as well as shows. So, I think there's a lot of ways for us to get grounded in getting that information on a regular basis.
Renee?
We don't do formal surveys per se, but I can almost say ditto. We do that through retail consumers calling in, asking for things, as well as talking to our customer base as to what they need through meetings, as well as just general talk and communication throughout the year.
Let's do another poll. Let's find out from attendees at what level of detail you create your sales plan at. So do you do it at the annual sales dollar level? Do you do it at the product category, subcategory, SKU, or we actually don't develop a sales forecast? So if everybody would do a quick click, and we can see at what level people do this. I was looking at the polls from the last time we did this, and back then I think it was 13 to 14% of the attendees did not even develop a sales forecast, which is interesting. Right now that's still zero. No one's saying that they haven't yet. Excuse me. But interesting to see again at what level people are planning, and then from there take it into the operational side. So let's close this, and you can take a look, and you can see what level most of us here are doing it at the SKU level, followed by subcategory, followed by product category, followed by annual sales dollars. So it's interesting. So I probably could have dug out the old slide. I thought there was more at the subcategory level last time. So there's a lot more now at the SKU level, which is great. Okay, let's want to move on here and talk about something that Mike brought up, which is data, which data drives assumptions. For those that can't read this, it says, I made the mistake of thinking the manager of a Christian bookstore wouldn't have a gun. So the question is assumptions. Actually, it was Renee that talked about a little gut that's thrown in there. You could maybe translate that into assumptions. But when we start putting plans together, everyone puts plans together, there's some data piece to it and there's assumptions piece to it. We've been looking at the historical trends of NICS, and we're all making this assumption or guess or plan of what it's going to be in the future at the macro sense. And then we say, geez, there's going to be a stronger demand on the pocket pistols, maybe the MSRs, the ammo to go with those defensive pistols. So those are the assumptions that we're making. What we found is that many companies don't document these assumptions. In fact, when you go back to reviewing the sales plan, it's not necessarily that the plan's off, it's that the assumptions that you made about that plan are off. So the first thing we always recommend is document the assumptions, and then when you do the reviews, go back and review those assumptions. When Mike talked about data, this is some of the data that we recommend you look at. I'll ask me a little from our panelist here, but you've got the product category analysis. Okay, this is a monthly product category analysis. You've got the sales by customer. This is actually sliced by category by customer, so you can see which customers are growing or where they're selling and not selling. You might have a year-over-year demand at the customer level, but ultimately you want to end up with, I'll call a sales forecast. This one here being at kind of the subcategory SKU level, both by dollars and units. Okay, so the key here, though, is putting the assumptions in place that drives the data behind this, or actually maybe the data that drives the assumptions, which then is where this forecast comes into play. Renee, I mentioned you with the gut feel. Is this somewhat in line about the analysis you do and where you end up when you're done?
Yes, it is. It is, and like I said, some of that, the gut, we don't do it quite as formally as what you just said, but some of that gut just comes from knowing what our customers have told us, talking with our friends in the industry, whether it be gun manufacturers or accessory manufacturers, about what they're seeing, and that's exactly what we do. Yes.
Mike, do you get into that type of data analysis, or am I being the overly anal engineer?
No, we do that at that level. The only piece that we add that you don't show there is we put the margin dollars in.
Okay. Yeah, this is, again, the high level, a bunch of different pieces. But the data does help, right, for you to figure out, what's the future going to look like.
Absolutely.
Let's talk now about the impact on operations. So we've been talking about the whole sales plan, but the question is, okay, now you've got the sales plan, sales forecast. We're seeing here that most have it at the SKU level. I just want to check something before I go. Yep. Now linking that to operations, and I'll jump, to John. John, how much now is this linked down to an operational plan, whether it be manufacturing, purchasing, inventory management?
I talked about the team aspect of it before. I mean, on a weekly basis, we're meeting as a group, from a sales standpoint, as well as operations and finance, and meeting on a weekly basis to review the plan. So everyone's tied into it. Everyone's being communicated that needs to. And really it's, us collectively working and massaging the sales plan to the production plan. And obviously the challenges that come up with manufacturing, whether that's supplier issues or anything else that comes up, we're having to, adapt and move on a regular basis on things. But again, with our eyes still on the ball as far as our sales plan. and what we're trying to accomplish. So if anything, there's no surprises on the, what that production plan and how it's rolling forward. So again, the communication within the group, I think, helps manage this whole process effectively.
The key being no surprises, which is probably helpful, right?
Absolutely.
Mike, how's this link down for you to the operational side?
The same. We'll get down, as I mentioned previously, looking at SKU level, where to put our marketing dollars, where to put our purchase dollars, and then again, objectively coming back through from an overall margin assessment. From an inventory management aspect, I would say, as I mentioned earlier, that the financial piece will greatly be impacted this year for distributors and dealers alike by managing that inventory and continuing with a positive flow. So very, very important to distribution and dealer base.
Interesting. Renee, we talked earlier. You seem to have a very strong connection to the operational side.
Yes, I do have a strong connection to the operational side. So, just looking at that, we do correspond really closely with the operations guys and make sure that we're planning with them and coordinating everything with them to make sure that we're getting everything, that we get everything in our build plan and our sales plan together with them.
What would you say is some of the benefits you've received by having this linkage all the way down to the operational side?
I would say the number one benefit is being able to react quickly when something changes in the marketplace. So if all of a sudden we need to start producing a different item very quickly based on something that has happened or a demand switch, having the operations guys in tune with that and understanding what we're dealing with and how and why, they're able to more ebb and flow and change with us as we need. And so that works very, very well to include them to be in part of all of those conversations.
And Renee brings up a great point because, similarly, any kind of, promotions, you'd like to have a year plan and stick with it, but understanding you've got to be flexible and be able to move. I think that communication with operations allows you to go in there and say, hey, listen, we need to, get going on a promotion on this date and commit to this in production. So I think the buy-in from that side helps a lot as you go and make some changes to the plan during the year.
So John, how often do you adjust it, or at what point do you decide, oh, it's off more than it needs to be, and I need to change it?
I don't think there's any defined period, that we can, but we're constantly looking at it, and if adjustments need to be made, we make them. I don't think it can be in concrete, and you've got to be willing to be flexible at a moment's notice. If we all look at it from a competitive standpoint, you want to be better, and to us, flexibility is the key in that.
I think you had a 12-month rolling. Do you adjust it
Correct.
Each month then? Okay.
Yes.
And Mike,
really where Go ahead. I think really where that adjustment takes sometimes is a production plan, from that sales forecast.
And Mike, you've got, I thought, 18-month rolling. So do you adjust yours monthly or more often than that?
Well, we look at it on a daily basis, much like John mentioned. From a true adjustment aspect, we would look at it quarterly. If we fall short in a category or SKU from a sales aspect, we'll push the change into the new month and make an effort from a promotional aspect to sell that or advertise. And then if need be, if that slide continues to happen, then we'll make an adjustment at the quarter level.
At the quarter level?
Yes.
Okay. So just time-wise, we've got about 10 minutes left. And we've got a few more slides, but if people have questions, we're trying to reserve about 5 minutes at the end of this for some questions. There's a couple here. And if there's others you want to add, please put them through. and we'll try to get to them before we're done. The other thing that I'm going to go back to my preaching about process is what you should watch for. In fact, Jim talked earlier about the not only NICS, but the Manufacturing Export Report, the MO report, public company results. You can look at what the public companies do. At least you see some information there from an external perspective, and then you see down below some of the internal metrics that we suggest you look at. Mike mentions the inventory turns as a key piece to this. I remember talking to a dealer, and I believe it was in April or so of 14, I forget, but based on his web traffic, he said that AR sales, MSR sales were going to drop. And it was based on some web traffic, and a few months later, that's exactly what happened. I'm forgetting what the year was. So this is back to, again, the process of what are you looking at and what are you measuring. We can put all these great plans together. I think what I heard consistently from each panelist here is that they're reviewing it on a daily to weekly basis, and weekly if not formally. I'm assuming from that's you're going to make those adjustments is what I'm hearing. So anyone want to add to that on the metrics side? I
think I would add, Chris, that, the other information as a manufacturer we do get some distributor feed information that we take into account, as well as the chain customers or the mass merchant, in which you've got either edifice or point of sales data that again that we're constantly looking at. So it's just another method, and I think that information we're getting back is being used. So I think from an IT standpoint, we're starting to work with a company called BI that's allowing us to take a lot of information from our customers and getting that to get integrated into the forecasting element of our business. So again, information's key to success and how you build your plans. So the more information, the better. But I think now we're doing a better job in looking at that information coming to us.
That's great. There's a lot more metrics, KPIs that are just shown here. Yes. But I will mention what you'll see in the right side of there is a little dashboard. A tool that we found that in terms of collecting the data and analyzing the data, there's you mentioned the word BI, Mike, John, business intelligence. There's a tool out there called Tableau. Microsoft also has its BI tool, but those are two tools we found that are phenomenal to consolidate all different types of data within your company, the ERP, the consumer data, the spreadsheets you have, just as another great tool. Let me launch the last poll, and the question is going to be to ask what your number one challenge is going to be in building a reliable sales forecast or sales and operations plan, actually. Excuse me. So everything from the process, the tools to analyze the data. So I just gave you the answer on the tools. Tableau, Microsoft, BI. Agreeing on a number, and I had to throw the time in there. I only get 5 choices. That's where the other comes into play. So people would just do that, and then we'll wrap this thing up. Excuse me. Looks like the other category is filling up more, so I may have missed some specific areas. But I'm going to close this up, and we'll talk about this, and then wrap it up. So let's close this up here. And I'll share it.
The other category ought to get a few questions out of that too.
Go ahead, George. I was going to ask you, to react to this. Everyone's putting in other, so I need to, maybe add more categories here. Excuse me. But
what I was saying is there should generate a bunch of questions here that hopefully we can get to in the next 5 minutes. If those that clicked on other tell us what the other is, or what they perceive that might be. I think that would be pretty darn interesting for the rest of us.
And if we don't get to answer some of the questions, all the questions, we'll try to get those answered as best I can, or maybe actually ask our panelists if they can do that. We only got 5 minutes left here. So But where'd my poll go? Yeah, so most is other, followed by agreeing on a number internally. I'd probably default to John and you bringing your team together. It sounds like just get everyone together has helped you, I'll say, agree on a number and getting a better forecast and a plan.
And I think right? And I do think it's, it also brings up, is this a top-down number-driven or is it, bottom-up? And I think it's probably both. But when you do communicate and you work as a team, it does get easier going forward because once it's built, you're really just continuing it and just rolling it forward. Mm-hmm. So I think it's that first step, and then it might be a little painful doing that SKU analysis, but long term, it's been real positive.
I think that's right on the money, John. That hits it, and the perpetuation of what you're doing, particularly if it's working, is really important. If it ain't broke, just continue on.
Right.
So let me do this just for the sake of time. I'm going to close this out. Excuse me. And I see there's a couple questions here. I'm going to try to get one of them. One was a question about the percentage that you allocate to your marketing budget. So I'm going to see if anyone wants to answer that because that's something getting a little proprietary. Does anybody want to answer that? A lot of quick takers on that. Yeah, I know. Here was the other thing that was asked. It's interesting because they ask, how do you get the rest of the organization to buy into the plan? John, you want to tell me how you've talked a lot about the team, how you've pulled that together?
I think engaging them in it and meeting with them regularly, having them, if they own one part or one segment of the business, to work up their specific base. And I think once they're engaged in it and there's some ownership, and then it becomes a task-driven session that you have with your teammates in building the plan. And I think the other thing, honestly, is measuring it and going back to say, how did we perform overall? And I think, a pat on the back to say, hey, listen, we were pretty close there. It isn't perfect, but it is a plan to get somewhere. It's not going to be perfect. You got to be able to adjust it. And I think with that going forward, I think you get the buy-in. Because I think the buy-in is the success on the customer side, where they start to see a reduced lead time on product, a more timely delivery setup, and shipment. And if we can reduce lead time, hopefully that's going to increase turns and increase profitability for all.
Profitability being a good thing. I got one of the answers that someone answered as to what is, when I had other, the answer was all of the above. So how's that for a earlier? Just because of time, I want to wrap this up. What's that?
I'd say a very definite maybe.
Very definite maybe. We'll try to answer some of the other questions that we got electronically here. But I guess first I'd like to summarize. Looking, the long-term prospects in the industry, I think, look positive. Based on what we're hearing. We have a good, again, the election side is going to be positive for the organization, for the industry. I've heard a lot about becoming more sophisticated, more refined in the process. And George mentioned earlier, if it's going to be a new normal, you need to compete, you need to be better. And basically, the sales and operations planning, not just understanding what the forecast is going to be or creating a sales plan, but managing it, to a weekly or daily basis. That's what's going to drive the profitability. And, basically it comes down to, if you do a better job than they do, your competition, you'll be more successful. So let me, I want to go around the panelists and ask for some final input, insight, or advice you'd like to add. Jim, I haven't asked you in a while there. You got something you want to add here at the end?
Sure. I mean, no matter how you look at it, 2017 is going to have its challenges, and one of the best ways to meet those challenges is to improve your personal skills, SHOT Show 2017. We have a lot of educational opportunities. A new one that we're introducing, SHOT Show Executive Management Seminar, is going to help fill that need of improving yourself. We've got quality presenters coming in to talk about voice of customer initiatives, keys to peak performance, and we're seeing good interest in that. And anybody that's interested, go ahead and take a look at that Executive Management Seminar. Thank you to Chris and Growth Strategy Partners for being a sponsor of that event. And again, anytime anybody has any research-related questions, feel free to reach out to me at NSSF.
Thanks, Jim. Mike?
Well, I'd like to first say thank you to both you and George for having me on as a panelist. It's been exciting and a good process, and I would add that your statement you have, he who executes the best wins. And again, I can't emphasize enough, as we've talked about the data, if you are not a data person, this will be the year to get involved in the data and understand at the, I would say, behind the scenes aspect of the business, the financial aspect, and how to make your business more profitable. This is the year to do it. So I wish everybody an outstanding new year. And a Merry Christmas, and look forward to having strong growth for the shooting sports industry in 2017. And thank you again.
Thanks, Mike. John?
Just thank you again for allowing me to participate, and thinking of Mossberg. And I'd like to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. And again, if anyone has any questions, individually, we make ourselves available if anyone's got questions on tools. But challenge your team, and challenge also your IT group on take advantage of some of the system capabilities that are out there. And again, I think a plan moving forward, and sometimes it's simple steps to get the process moving, but I think long term you're going to be in a whole lot better shape. So thanks again for engaging us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, John. Renee?
Yes, also thank you for involving us as well, and I also wish everybody a good year in 2017, and I also believe that paying very close attention down to the SKU level as far as what things are doing in the industry and in the market is going to be a key to success in 2017, and utilizing that data and pushing through and being able to change your plan when needed based on what the data is telling you.
For myself and George, I'd like to thank NASGW. Thank everyone for attending. I hope you gained some insight out of it, and I hope you will actually go and make the business better. And happy holidays to everybody, and we're done. Everyone have a great day.
All right.